There you go. Hey, Pat, it is time for a chat with Pat.
Yes, and today's guest, I'm the host, but today's guest is
Yes, you are.
That's
it's Monday morning after a holiday.
check your name
Helen,
badges.
Helen Alvare, and she is the Robert A. Levy Endowed Chair in Law and Liberty at the Antonin Scalia Law School, George Mason University, where she teaches family law, law and religion, and property law. And we're going to be talking about her article, The New Feminism Then and Now. Welcome, Helen. How are you today?
I'm well. Thank you very much.
Thanks for taking this time to be on the show this morning, especially after a holiday weekend. Really appreciate it.
Not
and
at
so,
all.
so, Helen, tell us a little bit about. I read this article and was quite taken by it. How would you describe for our audience what you consider the new feminism 1.0? And
Right,
how does Christianity fit into it, or does it?
right. So let me say the article came into a context where there's like a fresh dispute over even using the word feminism.
Right.
And having lived with John Paul II's teaching on the new feminism and then followed up by Benedict and Pope Francis in the same, they asked me to comment on it. You know, the fear was that the claim was that feminism generally is anti-men, anti-children, anti-life. It's kind of nasty. And I wanted to point out that while the new Christian feminism wasn't perfect, in particular, maybe it spent a little too much time assuring the world that, you know, we were for the kind of equality the world was talking about, equal pay and equal employment. Whereas I think something that it could do better in a new feminism 2.0 is to say this whole teaching is based on our being in the image and likeness of God. Our first task is to discern his will and do it with things that obviously he made two sexes for a reason women are specially called to do.
Do you find, though, Helen, that in our society today, there's almost like, and maybe it's just the way I view it, but a kind of almost a schizophrenic understanding of women, in the sense that so often women kind of want to be like men. They see that they have to do all the same things men do, in a sense. But then there's this other part where women want men to be like women. And you know, and so when you list the characteristics in your article, you know, capacity for the other, I think all those you list sometimes are hard for women, especially to discern. Well, the world kind of tells them, well, men should be doing this stuff too. So how do you help women with that?
Oh, boy. First of all, schizophrenic is a really terrific term for that. There's so much here. Let me try and get in. First of all, these are age-old fights. They've probably been around as long as males and females have been around. The idea of, are we jealous of the gifts that the other has a bit more? Even though most of our stuff overlaps, right? We have similar human capacities. There are differences, and it's not only in the ability to bear and nurture a child, right? There are some overall differences one sees in everything from interviews with women qualitatively to the choice of work that women make to the amount of time women have a preference for spending with their children. There are some differences. I think this fight over whether, well, we're just passive, you know, versus active, or, you know, don't keep us from the big money out in the world in the corner office. These are very, very old, and they're not going to go away. What the new Christian feminism is trying to do is to say, listen, you both image God. Both of you are not only subject to one another in service, but subject first to God. And both of you should be asking what his will is for you. Neither of you is less subject to the Almighty than the other. And even if you have different roles in the world, that is no comment on differences in fundamental equality. The world has trouble with that. It's mysterious to them. To them, equality is sameness. We are trying to maintain the fragile and mysterious position that there are differences but sameness. And final comment on this, think about what a fabulous lesson that is as a global philosophy. The idea the differences between races and nations and ages and abilities, that differences do not rank. This fundamental difference that God has established between men and women is also a lesson about every difference in humanity.
That's very true. So, Helen, what do you think? Because the injustice that has been viewed over history toward women, is that viewed differently through the Christian lens versus the world's lens of injustice?
No, not when we're really talking about the words you use, which is injustice,
Okay.
which is an objective
Okay.
term, meaning it truly is unfair, right? Considering the
Right.
circumstances.
Right.
The world, however, believes that Christianity blesses this with some notion that, Eve is the greater hated early figure versus Adam. The world thinks that the church is cool with this. In fact,
Yeah.
what the church teaches is not so much different, but it's more illuminated. We say that the injustices that have been perpetuated, particularly respecting women, are a result of original sin. They're not what God has made. Men's tendency to dominate, and frankly, women's tendency to connive in their own subjection, right? It so pains me when I see, particularly, a young woman who is sort of flaunting her body as if that's her main work, as if,
Yeah.
looking at her and having something beautiful to show the world physically is all she's got. Women connive in their own subjection too, but men dominate. Again, this is unjust, but we see it as a product of original sin, requiring salvation and redemption, not merely this worldly give us X to be equal, but actually to be redeemed, to love one another in a way that is almost too good to be true.
Oh, I love that, Helen. And one of the things that I love about this article too is that you say you got a lot of this wrong in your own life. So we're, because I see it in I think we're about the same age. I see it in my life too. So where do we go from here? Like, how do we kind of get this Christian feminism into the mainstream here?
Well, we're not dead yet, right? So we still have time to fix things.
That's right.
And I think I almost called this talk, and I joked that I almost called it Confessions of a New Feminist Lab Rat, because my life and career completely coextensive with John Paul II's development of New Feminism, and it's carried forward to the later popes. I think, frankly, we have to be honest with ourselves when we conform too much to the world's view of equality as sameness or as anti-male. The Catholics, thank God, an authentic Catholic belief does not fall into to the anti-life mentality, but we can easily fall into, the anti-male or equality as sameness mentality. It does require a more honest discernment of whether we were just and a more honest prayer life.
Oh, Helen, thank you so much. I know you're a busy woman. Thanks so much for being with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
And have a great week ahead. Our guest today was Helen Alvare. She is the Robert A. Levy Endowed Chair in Law and Liberty at the Antonin Scalia Law School, George Mason University, and she teaches family law, law and religion, and property law. And we were talking about this great article in the Church Life Journal called The New Feminism Then and Now. She is just a brilliant woman.
I have to tell you, I think the Confessions of a New Feminism Lab Rat kind of has a ring to it.
I thought so too. That is in her first paragraph, Reflections and Confessions of a New Feminist Lab Rat. I thought, everybody would have read that.
Yeah, that's good. That's very, very good. And so was the conversation. Thank you so much, Pat, for having that conversation and our daily conversations here on Morning Offering, a chat with Pat.